Cambridge Radio is powered by volunteers who care about sharing the voices, stories and sounds of our city. But rising costs from rent to equipment and music licences mean we need your help. By this September, we need to raise enough money to secure our future in 2027. If Cambridge Radio has ever made you smile, kept you company, or helped you feel part of this city, please donate today. Visit cambridge.radio/support us.
Cambridge Film Show. Cambridge Radio.
Hello there, and welcome to this fortnight's edition of the Cambridge Film Show, broadcasting right here on Cambridge Radio, across the city and South Cambridgeshire. And today, 4th of July, as our cousins across the pond celebrate 250 years of independence, why don't we celebrate one of their greatest gifts to the world, cinema, as we usually do. So let's forget the football just for the next hour, and let's take a journey through some superheroes, some toys and Vikings, plus some strange yellow creatures. Here in the studio, I'm Emma Marchant in the host's chair. You can call me the Jessie of this week, and joining me is Nick Ken Kitchen.
Hello.
Stuart, Mr. Potato Head Pask.
Hello.
And Mark Woody Walsh.
Well, hello.
I know, I thought you'd like that. Summer is here, and so are some big releases. We will turn our critical eye to the latest in the newly rebooted DC universe, Supergirl, and also check out those lovable yellow ruffians, the Minions, with the monsters. Mads Mikkelsen comes to the fore in The Last Viking, and A24 brings us the dinner party from, I'm not entirely sure where, in The Invite. Turning to streamers, we have our weekly rom-com with voicemails for Isabel, and mismatched puerile buddy comedy Little Brother. But we will start this week by returning to Woody, Buzz, Jessie and the rest of Andy's room gang. 7 years after the last instalment, it's Toy Story 5.
It's good to be back.
Shiny.
What?
Nothing.
Someone needs a brown marker.
It's been too long, Woody.
Came here as fast as I could after Jesse called for help.
Oh, thank you.
We've got it handled. Look, Star, Deputy, me, no Star.
Oh, hey, Buzz, what is that?
What? Where?
Ow.
Hey,
I'm gonna let this device know how things are run around here.
try to stay calm, Jesse.
I'm the definition of calm.
That's not gonna work.
I just mentioned 7 years. Can I make everyone feel incredibly old and remind you all it's 31 years since the original Toy Story came along, and I don't think it's exaggeration to say sort of changed animation and family films really for the whole generation. I feel like this franchise needs no introduction, so suffice to say our toys are still with Bonnie, bar Woody and Bo Peep, who are living free as lost toys, but a new threat has arrived in the shape of tech toy Lilypad, voiced by Greta Lee. Cue Jessie, Joan Cusack's move to centre stage to try and stop the insidious grip of technology making the toys obsolete. Throw in a group of rogue Buzz Lightyears and a new kid called Blaze, and we are ripe for a new adventure. Mark, as I sort of alluded to there, obviously Toy Story, this is the fifth in an incredibly successful franchise for Pixar. They could be sort of, you could slightly sort of say that maybe it finished with 3 and then 4 was almost unnecessary. There's been some talk that maybe this was unnecessary again. But I feel that a film is good if a film is good. What did you think?
I would agree with that idea that 4 was a bit unnecessary. I have put forward the view many, many times that the original Toy Story trilogy is the best film trilogy ever made, bar none. I think in terms of the quality of 3 films in a trilogy as an average, I defy anyone to tell me there's been a better 3 films. And I went into the 4th one with the hope that it would maintain that standard, and it didn't quite. And it feels more disappointing because there wasn't any need for it. The first 3 wrapped things up so efficiently. And now we're going to the well a 5th time, and I really feel there needs to be a strong justification for it. There is, in the sense that we're now talking about the input of technology, and there are some very prescient scenes in this film where everyone is just on their devices. The toys are basically running free because no one's watching. It's no longer they have to hide when people come. People don't care anymore because of the devices, and that's got a certain creepiness to it. Does this justify another trip to the well? I'm not sure it does. It takes an awful long time to get where it's going. When it does, the second half of this film, I'm going to be honest, I did cry because I'm a big softie. I had a really good time with the latter stages of it. I'm not sure that doing this again justifies all the work that had to go into getting us to that point. And there's a bit of me which is like, please now stop. Please don't tarnish the memory of those first three anymore. Even though this is good, it's not great. But it's made $400 bazillion, so they're going to do another one.
Well, yeah, this is true. And I mean, and also, we haven't had a great run for Disney Pixar, I think, either creatively or at the box office over the last few years anyway. So obviously then with them coming back with this, I mildly disagree with you, Mark. I think I found more to enjoy in this maybe than you did. I also cried, of course I did. Nick, as Mark alluded to, obviously this is about those of us who have children in this room, or you know, those of us, we all have children in our lives of some age, and we know that the last 10 years, you know, look, the government has just taken away social media for under 16s anyway, so we know how insidious the leak of technology into their lives have been.
Cool, yeah.
Do you think they did a good job in introducing this? Because it was a little bit on the fence in a way.
So I quite enjoyed watching the movie. It has looks beautiful. It's stunning sheen across the whole thing. But the more I've reflected on it, I'm afraid the more I dislike this movie. And it coming at it from a technology point of view. I mean, firstly, it's slightly ironic. I think they bottle it, basically. They're stuck in the 50s and 60s where they still think that childhood is about playing with certain toys, which to an extent is true. The issue with technology is social media and what it's doing to teenagers. Now, you could argue it starts earlier than that, to the under 10s, but actually the evil nemesis in this movie is a fairly innocuous lily pad, which is actually quite a useful device for kids, and maybe it's almost a gateway drug into the social media, and the phones are the problem, not these little lily pads. And then they bottle it, as far as I'm concerned, because they sort of say, well, actually tech's not that bad, and it's only really bad if you sort of use it in the wrong way, which, considering Apple started this whole thing back in whenever it was, 95, I suppose, you know, they've got to be thankful for some element of technology. And the more I've sort of reflected on it, the more I realise the jeopardy's gone. There's that sense of loss and mortality. Woody comes in and he's got a bald patch and a bit of a paunch. And that didn't really make sense to me, because Woody's starting to age, but not fade. And for me, it was all about, Mark's right, the first three were peerless. I agree with you. Really hard to think of another trilogy that can top that. And this loses all of that pathos, all of the sense of loss of childhood. It's just going on and on. I mean, Woody's running free now, and it sort of just felt like it lost its way. Watching it, I enjoyed the experience, but reflecting on it, and Pixar is trying to address an important issue, which is a very important issue. I think they bottled it, and that's annoyed me the more I think about it.
I can tell it has. Stu, I'll come to you. We've talked a lot about the sort of tech side of things, but there is also this subplot with the clone, with the sort of rogue box of Buzz Lightyears, which sort of echoes back to number 2 and also number 1, you know, trying to teach Buzz that he is in fact a toy, and then, you know, he's the one that always gets rebooted in number 3 when he starts talking Spanish, and there's also a rather sweet love story between Jessie and the original Buzz. Did you feel that all of these moving parts came together in a cohesive whole?
I think sometimes when they have too many different angles and too many different subplots, it can get confusing, and it can be it can complicate things and make things less enjoyable, but I think in this case they all came together quite well. I think the sort of subplot with the 50 odd Buzz Lightyears had some fantastic little moments and callbacks to cinema history. So Tim Allen gets to do with his Buzz Lightyears a little sort of homage to Tom Hanks' Castaway at the opening of the film. And Tim Allen as well gets to have his little Bambi moment as well. Well, again, all of these toys in the wilderness get to interact with the wildlife, and I think it's some of the most sort of animal accurate animation you've seen in a Toy Story film to date, because they've never really had to focus on too much on the toys being in the wild. So that was pretty cool to see as well, and it was sort of very reminiscent of like the Wild Robot and things like that, and even Hoppers as well. So that was good to see. In terms of my sort of feelings on sort of Toy Story on the whole, I know that Mark and Nick have said certain things like they haven't enjoyed it as much as the first three. But for me, the Toy Story franchise is a very inherent part of my time growing up with cinema. So I saw the first Toy Story back in 1995. It was March 1995 in what was the View Cinema until it was closed recently, when it was still Warner Village, and I was only about 8 years old then, and so for me, the Toy Story franchise, I've grown up with it, so I guess I have a lot more of a nostalgic view of it. And every time I see one of these Toy Story films, it always sort of takes me back to my childhood, and it really gets to me. I get very emotional watching those films.
And can I just say, that's lovely to hear, because that's what cinema should be at its best. So that is really good to hear. I'm probably just being a grumpy old man.
No, I think, I get that sense of nostalgia as well from a slightly different perspective. I saw the first Toy Story when I was at cinema in Bath, so it was my third year at uni, and of course then you get the Pixar logo at the beginning. That's what takes me back into childhood. Those 80s shorts which used to pop up on cartoon programmes hosted by people who sadly we can't mention anymore for various nefarious reasons. But there is that sense of nostalgia, and actually there is a bit of me which missed a bit of that nostalgia, because some of the minor characters do get a bit sidelined. The kind of supporting coterie past Buzz and Woody do get quite marginalised in this. There's only little tiny moments for them, whereas actually Buzz and Woody maybe don't get marginalised enough, because this is Jessie's story and the film doesn't have the confidence to tell her story in isolation.
I think I do it, because I was going to say one of my favourite things of this is that Joan Cusack really does get so much space and so much airtime, and what a joy. She came onto the red carpet for the first time in 11 years to promote this movie. It obviously means a lot to her, and the one piece of incredibly sort of poetic and emotional lore is entirely connected to Jessie, and I thought they did give her the space to breathe for that.
To an extent, but then we get this subplot with the 50 Buzz Lightyears on their little epic quest, sort of a Homerian odyssey, which is just distracting us from that story. I feel there was a way to tell Jessie's story in a tighter way that didn't detract from that.
But you have to remember, attract small children into this as well, because not everyone is going into it with the warm fuzzies that we've all got for various reasons. Because we've seen in 31 years, there's going to be plenty of kids going in there that Toy Story does not have the same.
And you've got all of those little other sort of archaic technology toys, voiced by the likes of Conan O'Brien, that you could have put more focus on. I don't want to tear this film down too much, because it's good. It's just not a masterpiece like the first three were.
Well, yeah, but then I also like 4 a lot more than other people said. I think it looks great. I'm with you. I think that's such a key point to say, Stuart, because the animation has gone to where it has. It looks amazing, and I think it still brings enough warmth and enough heart and enough. It didn't feel like a cash grab, like naming no names, all the Disney live action remakes. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like there is still heart in this, and I think it's still got legs.
And I think, just to say that, I think because Mark's right, I think because we hold it to such high esteem, that the original trilogy, I'm probably knocking this a bit. I have high expectations for this film and the subtext that it's trying to get to, and I don't think it landed that. But it is a high bar I'm judging it against.
Yeah, if Pixar had done this once and Toy Story was a fluke, then you wouldn't come to this with expectations. Because it did it 3 times, because we have the likes of WALL-E and Up and Ratatouille and so many other cast iron classics, we put such a high expectation on Pixar. Maybe that is unfair.
Yes,
but
maybe.
that is where I'm coming from.
That's also from a long time ago when, like you said, people we don't mention anymore were still at the creative helm.
We're back to nostalgia, aren't we?
Yeah.
Stuart?
I think at the same time as well, there's some criticism here of how it sort of deals with the issues of growing up in childhood, and perhaps Toy Story isn't necessarily as convincing or a good a vehicle as that is as for the other film, which is Inside Out, which tackles that so much, perhaps in a more modern and a more, dare I say, clinical way. Because if the trailers, the credits at the end of those films, you have huge reams of list of child psychologists who they bring on to help critique these things. So maybe Toy Story is a little bit dated in that regard.
Well, I did cry at Inside Out 2. I didn't cry in Toy Story 5, I'm afraid.
We can call it classic, or we can call it dated, or we can call it nostalgic, but as Mark said, it is smashing the box office, and I think we've all in this studio said there's certainly some reason to go and see this. Toy Story 5 is a certificate PG and is showing at all the Cambridge cinemas. Let's move from beloved franchises to a new girl on the block.
Here's the thing. My cousin and I have very different ideas about what it means to be a hero. He sees the good in everyone. And I see the truth.
That was the trailer for Supergirl, and depending on who you are, the words DC Cinematic Universe may fill you with excitement or confusion or boredom, or maybe all three simultaneously. But with James Gunn's new creative team stealing the ship, following the massively successful, I loved it anyway, the Superman from last year, Supergirl represents another step in DC's latest attempt to get these superheroes flying in the same direction. The film stars Millie Alcock as Kara Zor-El, Superman's cousin and owner of that adorable mutt Crypto. Drawing inspiration from some of the characters' more cosmic comic book stories, Supergirl sees Kara embark on an adventure that takes her far beyond Metropolis and into the stranger corners of the DC universe. Stu, as resident comic book hero of our own, let's start with you. So Supergirl, I feel like is not anywhere near as well known as Superman. She's probably been in his shadow, if you like, both comically and in various Scream iterations. Does this film succeed in giving her the distinct identity that perhaps she needs for a new generation?
I think, unfortunately, no. I think it's ambitious, but I think it's a little bit... I don't think it's a particularly well told story. I mean, I love my superhero films. I'm particularly mostly of the Marvel camp, as you know, but particularly with the Snyder DC films, I was never a fan of those. I was really optimistic for Gunn's sort of producing the current iteration. The Superman film was quite good, but this one I feel I just found it quite boring, if I'm perfectly honest with you. I think that whilst Millie Alcock does a very, very good job embodying the character, I think the material she's been given in this particular instance sort of fell short. I think it looked far too similar to Guardians of the Galaxy. The aesthetic is very, very much the same, and as much as I love the Guardians of the Galaxy films, I would have loved to have seen something a bit different. I don't know what that would have been, but I think it just felt like James Gunn needs to let Guardians of the Galaxy go and go in a different direction. But yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Nick, superhero movies are also sort of made and lost, if you like, on their baddies and sidekicks as much as anything else. I'm holding my hands up. I haven't seen this one. Who are the baddies? How are the baddies?
Well, that's an interesting question, and actually, I sort of need to rewind it. So I can see DC comic fans not particularly liking this movie because I don't know where it fits in. It doesn't get itself too bogged down with the DC universe, I think, in the way that the Superman film had to last year. I enjoyed that movie, to be fair, and I quite enjoyed this movie because I think it gave itself the time and space to tell its own story. And the reason I will answer your question about the baddies, I think Craig Gillespie is an odd choice of director. It does have the feel or the look of a Gunn movie. It felt like we were in the Guardians universe, but it didn't have it had the look but not the feel, and Craig Gillespie, and for those who don't know, he's directed I, Tonya and Dumb Money, both of which I really liked.
And Last and a Real Girl, so he's quite a kind of almost indie, really.
He's quite indie, and he gets behind the human condition, the frailty of human condition. He explores the duality of people's personality, of hubris and greed in Dumb Money, but I, Tonya, obviously, with the complex, the duality of her character. You don't really need any of that in Supergirl. Why is she called Supergirl, by the way, not Superwoman? Anyway, that's a small point. I'm not the first person to say that, but yes, I'm getting a thumbs up from the booth next door. Anyway, I digress. We don't really... The skills that Gillespie brings as a director aren't really called upon here. And the reason I say that is because Supergirl, I would have liked it to be directed by a woman, to be honest. The baddies are basically a paedophile ring. And enslaving women. Exactly. And I didn't... For me, it all came with this... I would have liked to have seen a female director helm this, not Craig Gillespie, who's a great director, but I think it's the wrong choice for this movie, tackling the subjects that he does in this movie. Very surfacely, I should just say. It's quite a good, fun action movie. I mean, I wasn't bored, I wasn't blown away. I probably liked it more than Stu. I think it had the space to tell its own story, but I wasn't blown away by it. Yeah, I mean, I think some odd choices of director, and I have no idea what Jason Momoa was supposed to be doing in this film.
I had to agree on the Jason Momoa point, because for me, again, it's another case of shoehorning in people for the sake of it, and he didn't need to be in the film at all. He doesn't lend much to it, but in the comics, the character Lobo has so much more going on for him, and he's like meant to be one of Superman's big bads. So. But even that said, in this story as well, the main villains, as you said, are basically a child trafficking ring, which is, you know, an awful thing, and it makes her an interesting sort of choice of villain. But it's not really such a typical superhero fodder.
They raise a very serious, you know, these are not cartoon characters. This is a serious thing they're doing, but then they surface over it. They don't really tackle it. They raise it and then drop it, really.
How do we think, is this good? Because as far as I can tell, this is not doing particularly well at the box office. We just talked about how well Toy Story 5 is doing. This is certainly not doing as well. Is this reflected because it's because we're still not very good on female superheroes? How, for example, does it compare to Wonder Woman? And is this going to affect the DC universe going forward, do you think? Like I say, after Superman was a big hit, obviously, and everyone was very excited to see what was coming next. Has this been a bit of a damp squib in terms of that? Or is David Corenswet and James Gunn enough of a double bill to make sure the next Superman flies high? Nice pun.
I'll let you answer that one.
I mean, I would like to think that based on the feedback they're going to get from the box office, from critics, and from fans alike from this film, that Supergirl continues. I'd love to see Supergirl on the screen again, and I'd like to have another go and for it to be done better. But I just really wasn't feeling this film.
I think I felt it more than Stu, but I can see why DC fans probably wouldn't. I will just give a shout out to Millie Alcock. I thought she was great.
Yeah.
As Supergirl. I'm going to call her Superwoman. Sorry, Superwoman.
I think she's a fine actress.
She's great, and she captured that kind of indie spirit of sort of slightly rebel child very well. I did see a comment from Stuart earlier about saying not so super, as in she does get beat up a lot in this movie.
Yeah, I mean she's sort of dragged through it, and then there is a very sort of intentional choice in this film to make her more vulnerable, because she chooses to spend, so she's the storyline happens around her 23rd birthday. She spends a lot of time under red sun planets, and red suns in the comic book lore make the Kryptonians weaker, as opposed to the yellow sun like Earth, where that's how they get their powers. So she's intentionally making herself vulnerable so she can go out and feel things probably more than Kal-El, Clark Kent, Superman would do. But still,
it just didn't carry that far enough, because that is an interesting premise, because one of the issues with Superman is how overpowered he is, right? You know, so that, but they didn't. It feels like they touched on things but never took anything quite far enough.
Exactly. It's always my problem slightly with superhero movies, is they're always so invincible. Where's the jeopardy? And I quite like the fact they touch like this. The whole movie's a bit like this. They touch on an interesting idea and then back away from it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that was a really interesting review, actually. Thank you very much. Supergirl is or Superwoman, as now Nick is liking to call it, but it is actually officially called Supergirl. Supergirl is a certificate 12A and is showing at the Light and the Everyman. We're sticking in cinemas, and let's move to our foreign language option of the week, The Last Viking. This is Danish, so there is no trailer. Now, despite the title, it might not be the long ships and sort of horned helmets adventure you might be expecting, nor indeed a tribute to the Viking row that's taking over the World Cup. Danish filmmaker Anders Thomas Jensen has reunited with Mads Mikkelsen and Nikolaj Likas, both of whom starred in his previous feature Riders of Justice, along with at least 3 or 4 other members of the cast, for another very Danish blend of violence, emotional damage and comedy so black you might need to take your torch in with you. Likas is Anker, a bank robber newly released from prison who returns home with unfinished business. 15 years later, a stash of stolen money was buried at the family home. Finding it is going to mean bringing along his traumatised and mentally unstable brother to help him find this at their family home. Oh, and also the brother, Mads Mikkelsen, may also think he's now John Lennon. What follows is a story all about family trauma, childhood abuse, mental illness, and the Beatles versus ABBA. And this is all wrapped up in that singular package, like I said, of very bleak Danish comedy violence. Mark, this has been Thomas Jensen's biggest success now in Denmark. I think at one point it had 40% of the Danish box office, so maybe I wouldn't say sensation, but it's certainly performing extremely well in its home. But as I said in my introduction, it has this really specific mix of violence and comedy. for international audiences, do you think that tonal mix can become uncomfortable, and how do you think we're going to respond?
I think it can become uncomfortable. But yeah, the film has got a very specific vibe that you need to lend yourself to. And actually, the film's overall thesis that, if we surround ourselves with weirdos, then none of us are weirdos because we're all, normal in that scenario. I actually quite buy into. I want to be one of the weirdos, frankly, and so I do respond well personally to that mix of both the absurd comedy and some of the darker violence, and this has pushes both to quite good boundaries. It's interesting to me because you've got someone like Mads Mikkelsen. He's not the star of the film by any stretch. He's by far the best known name internationally. From the likes of Hannibal, Casino Royale, all those, Doctor Strange, all those big name properties he's been in, but he's also such a standard bearer for the cinema of his home country. I think of things like The Hunt,
The Last Round. So good.
Another round.
The last round.
Well, this is the last Viking.
The last Viking. Another round, which is perfection.
Yeah, I mean, there are at times an awful lot of things going on. Everyone's got their own little subplot, which leads into their own bit of craziness. And actually, just when you think you've got some normal grounded characters, turns out they're a bit crazy too. But I went with it in that sense. It does take a while to get into that rhythm, a feeling where it's going. Might be the first instance in cinema history of Chekhov's person who involuntarily leaps out of a car when they're called the wrong name, which I don't think is spoiling too much. But it's just the eccentricity of it drew me in. IKEA obsessions and a guy with 40 personalities who's stuck on being Bjorn from ABBA and won't be one of the Beatles. All these little things just won me over gradually.
I particularly liked, I think, the fact that you have, and now Denmark is obviously not a huge country, and I really enjoyed seeing the combination of Sofia Grabel and Søren Malling, who are best known. I don't know if anyone saw the original Danish The Killing, when that was the sensation, the first count, and they are in that together, and they come back together as this very mismatched married couple. But particularly Søren Malling's character is just furious that he won't stop being this guy won't stop being Bjorn from ABBA, and I think that's a whole play on the sort of Danish-Swedish rivalry that you have. So he's like, he cannot comprehend that someone would think that ABBA are almost as good a band as the Beatles. You're right, there are these, but then it is incredibly dark. The flashes back to what has gone on in their childhood, and what both Nikolai Anchors, who's Nikolai Likas, I thought he was so good. It's so good in this, because I came off the back of this and I watched Riders of Justice, which almost the two of them, Mads Mikkelsen and Nikolai Lee, their characters in Riders of Justice are almost the polar opposites of each other. They almost swap around, because in this, Anchor is the tough bank robber who's coming back and is just trying to get that money and get out and leave his damaged family behind him and leave his damaged past behind him. And then you realise that there's all this trauma that needs to be unlocked, and as it is, you recognise quite what has happened to these two men to make them the people that they are. But interestingly, in Riders of Justice as well, it's all the same themes. And there is a line in that where they say, because you also have Nicholas Barreau, who pops up in this as a baddie, but in Riders of Justice as a goodie, and he at one point says, weirdos hang out with weirdos. It's like fat people hang out with fat people, so you look less fat. And I think you've put that beautifully, Mark. That is beautifully explored in this, but trying to explain it to someone after I'd gone to go and see it, it's one of the most complicated films, because like you say, there's so much going on in this.
There is, and I think you have to just let the plot develop in that sense. There are a lot of threads. I criticised a little bit earlier on Toy Story 5 for having maybe a lot of plot threads. This has them as well, but it knows how to pull them together better. It knows how to give each one a bit of time, and they feel more relevant to the overall plot when they start to come together. You gradually see everyone converging on that same situation, waiting for that anarchic payoff that is coming, and when it comes, it delivers. And consequently, all of those moments, the catharsis that you're waiting for as these things develop, both understanding what led the two brothers to this point, the trauma that went on before, and also waiting for the inevitable moment of euphoria when hopefully things work out well. I'm not going to say whether they do or not, but it does keep you it keeps you invested in the characters, wanting. I will say, Anchor is a terrible, terrible person, and yet you are rooting for him despite yourself. That
he
is.
barely smiles in this film, and then when he does smile, you're like, "That's what I've been waiting for." It filled me with joy inside.
I can't think of a character in film in recent history more loathsome that you actually want to succeed and want their moment of redemption. And that, to me, is to the testament of the storytelling here. There's a lovely little animated bookend to the film. There's a little animated opening and a closing. You've compared it to Riders of Justice. Is there a line in that where someone says, "No, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep playing Chiquitita," and then just cracks on?
It's incredibly dangerous. Yes, Nick.
Yeah, well, no, I was just going. Is it violent?
Yes, I was just about to say.
Oh, yes. Because I was going to.
We reviewed Over Your Dead Body last week, right?
Yeah.
And that was based on a Norwegian film, almost a shot-to-shot for Norwegian. So yes, this is that incredibly dark, Scandinavian, which violent.
Yes.
It is violent.
And I'm just. That's a warning for our listeners, in case you're thinking, because I sometimes think we should. If it really is.
I was going to come to that.
I will say on that I played my wife the trailer. We liked the vibe of it. We liked the sort of eccentricity. People being made Beatles costumes for being in the Beatles. Then I saw the film without her because she's away this weekend. I'm like, no, you couldn't have watched this. It's far too much.
I would agree, and I also think, as a warning for our listeners, but like I say, if you've watched Thomas Jensen's previous film Riders for Justice, there's extremely dark themes of sexual abuse in this, just like there is in that as well. But I think, like those dark Danish fairy tales of yore that got sanitised by Disney in America, if you like, so most of those ended pretty badly. This is a similar kind of fable, and I loved it. I can't think of something in the cinema I've seen that has been quite like this. And Mads Mikkelsen, I would watch him read the phone, because people say I do think he is incredibly compelling. And this has also brought all these other Danish actors to me. I really, really liked it.
Death, dismemberment and destruction. It's the feel-good movie of the year.
On that
note, we can say no more. The Last Viking is a certificate 15, but it is only a 15, but be warned, it is a very high 15, I would say, for violence and themes, and it's showing at the Picture House. Let's check in to Olivia Wilde and Seth Rogen's somewhat intense cheese and wine evening.
Hi, come in. Nice to see you. We are so happy you're here.
Are we expecting people? Can we put curtains on this window? I don't like how they can see into our apartment. This shirt, well, it's nice. It looks really good on you.
Well, you could tell me that once in a while.
That was the trailer for The Invite, which is a remake of the 2020 Spanish dark comedy Sentimental. Or Sentimentale, I don't know how you pronounce it in Spanish. I'm going to say Sentimental. The film is directed by Olivia Wilde, who also stars as Angela, somewhat highly strung and living in a San Francisco apartment straight out of an Edward Hopper painting with her husband Joe, played by Seth Rogen. Their marriage is perhaps not in the most harmonious of places, and when they invite their upstairs neighbours, Penelope Cruz and Edward Norton, over for dinner, what should be a civilised evening of making new friends becomes anything but that. Mark, it's you and me on this one. We've gone out to go and see The Outliers this week. Do you think did this film find the right mix, do you think, between that sort of marital discomfort, which we see quite a lot in particularly American films, I think, of a sort of bickering, privileged upper middle class couples bickering in their mid 40s or the Middle Ages, but did it make that comedy sharp enough to feel less uncomfortable and more like, no, this is good?
Oh, I mean, for me, it absolutely did. And I wouldn't say it's not uncomfortable. There are some moments in this which are deeply uncomfortable, but deliberately so and effectively so. I loved this. I think I had this fear when Olivia Wilde, first of all, made Booksmart, which was brilliant, and then we got Don't Worry, Darling, which is okay.
It has moments in it. I do not hate it. I know people. No, I know it had its problems.
It's a solid 3-star film.
And a lot of that, though, as well, I think, was about the dialogue around it and perhaps what had happened on set and perhaps clashes between. So I'm really pleased, and this isn't to do with the film so much, but I'm just pleased to see that has all now gone. Olivia Wilde has just brought us a really fine film.
She has, and that worry that Don't Worry, Darling was where her ability really was, and that Booksmart was the outlier. Now, thankfully, Don't Worry, Darling is the outlier, and Booksmart, which is just phenomenal, and this are the level that she can deliver, and it's so heartwarming to see her delivering at this level again. But beyond that, I mean, I didn't watch House, so I haven't seen her as 13. It's probably the biggest acting role she's had. I was thinking of things like Rush. And I've seen a fair few films with her in, and I can't think of a role where I remembered her acting, particularly after the film. I'll remember it after this, because she's phenomenal.
She's the best one
on
in
screen.
I think out of 4 really strong performances, I think hers was the best.
They are all brilliant. They're all. The other 3 are kind of plain to type. We get a very Seth Rogen role from Seth Rogen. We get the kind of sleazy, smarmy hawk. It's just making your skin slightly crawl with Edward Norton, doing it very well. Penelope Cruz is the Spanish ingenue who's bringing a little bit of mystery and then ripping people to shreds later on.
She's sort of like an overly sexualized sex therapist, right?
She's taken out the filter and the boundaries, and thinking, how are you not in serious trouble with your profession,
with your parent, with your patient,
yes,
patient-doctor relationships here.
But put these 4 people into this melting pot. There are such good dynamics in all of the pairings, because they at various points get fenced off into the different pairings and subsets within the groups. All of those work individually. They're all believable characters. You believe their wishes, their dreams, their neuroses, the way in which they interact with each other. It all sits wonderfully well. The original film was a film that played at the Cambridge Film Festival a few years ago. Seth
I haven't seen it.
Seth Gay is a filmmaker who's brought a lot of films here through the Catalan Film Festival strand at the film festival. This is, I think, now the 4th different international remake. I was
just looking at that. This is actually the 5th. France, Italy, Switzerland, South Korea have all made remakes of this original Spanish. So effectively, it's the 6th, if you like, the 5th remake, sixth version of this.
And it feels in that sense like a play. I mean, I think a few reviews have made references to the likes of Abigail's Party as a kind of trite comparison. What's wonderful about Olivia Wilde's direction is it never feels like a play. Her cinematography, choice of angles, the way in which she's blocking the film. It never feels like it's got stage origins. It always makes you interested. It brings you in. You forget that they're all confined in this one flat for the entirety of the film.
I think we have to shout out Rashida Jones, obviously best known, for me, for Parks and Recreation,
and Perkins,
and also Will McCormack. They wrote the screenplay together, and
it's a cracking adaptation.
Well, and also, like you say, I don't know. It does feel slightly stagey. I can't deny that it doesn't. The number of Dutch angles it's got, it still feels a little bit stagey.
It's never going to go away with that completely. But I think she does a great job with the setup that she's got.
Well, and I think as well, along with the set design, and because like I say, the colours of the apartment, the look of the apartment. One of Seth Rogen's issues is that they've inherited his parents' apartments for the many reasons he feels like a failure, because it's not a spoiler to say that the key. Olivia Wilde's character Angela is invited neighbours down to make friends with them. Seth Rogen's issue is that he wants to bring up with the fact that they make love incredibly loudly at 4 a.m. above their heads, and he is unhappy about this. And she's like, I don't see why we should, I don't want to tell them off about that. This is wonderful that woman is enjoying it so much. Suffice to say, this maybe does come up and all ends up in places that you're not necessarily expecting it to end up in. But I wholeheartedly agree with you, Mark. It's beautifully acted. The way that the dialogue naturally overlaps with each other, and there are times when you will gasp, both in the discomfort of watching these relationships dismantle, but also just what is being said. It's smart. It's really smart. It's an adult film in the best sense of the word.
For me, the biggest comment I have to pay is there's a big dial with comedy written on one end and drama written on the other. And Olivia Wilde just turns the knob with this wonderful script, as you say, by Will McCormack and Rashida Jones, turns the knob on that very gently from comedy to drama. And you start by thinking you're watching a comedy of manners, you end by realising you've had insights into the souls of all these people. You never feel the transition jarring.
It never quite gets to that point. You're like, I cannot listen to these people screech at each other anymore, which maybe in the first 10 minutes. It's a really, really deft piece of filmmaking. The Invite is a certificate 15 and is showing at all Cambridge cinemas.
Cambridge Radio. Want Cambridge to know your business? Put it on Cambridge Radio. From cafes and clinics to startups and stores, our listeners are your neighbours, tuned in at breakfast, at work and on the school run. We'll script it, voice it and get you on air fast, with flexible packages for every budget and real results you can measure. Grow local. Advertise on Cambridge Radio. Book a free chat today. Go to cambridge.radio/advertise.
Cambridge Show.
Cambridge Radio.
You are listening to the Cambridge Film Show here on Cambridge Radio with me, Emma Marchant, Stu, Nick and Mark. If you've missed any of your favourite shows or coverage on Cambridge Radio, please remember you can catch up at any time. Just head to cambridge105.co.uk and search for Listen Again. It's where you'll find all our shows as well. And now right back into the melee with Minions and Monsters.
In Hollywood, the new stars of the silver screen changed the face of the motion picture industry forever. The Minions are back with a touch of mystery.
Baby. Oh, Humphrey. Piñata. Carbonara. Lasagna.
Now in Minion Vision.
Just before we head into Minions and Monsters, I just want to correct myself. The web address is actually cambridge.radio now. Much handier. Right, that was a trailer for Minions and Monsters, and here we are, more than a decade after first escaping the Despicable Me franchise and becoming a global phenomenon in their own right. Kevin, Stuart and Bob are back for another adventure. This time, the action leads to 1920s Hollywood, where the Minions arrive at the dawn of the movie business and set themselves a simple mission to find the greatest monsters imaginable to star in their films. And what follows is a collision of cinema, classic movie creatures and the usual Minion favoured chaos. Stuart, let's come to you. The Minions have somehow become one of the most successful, we're on 2 massive animated franchises this week, ever created. What is it about these characters that the audiences still seem to love?
So, a quick correction. So it's not the original trio of Minions which you listed there. It's actually a prequel set in the 1920s. So it's James, Henry and Ed. So it's a whole new... and
do they have new personalities?
They're basically still the same personalities. No, they do have some differences. So like these Minions, so that the whole sort of gist is like, so the way they sort of spun the sort of whole sort of marketing for this film was it was going to be a monster film with dashes of Hollywood, but I think it's very much the other way around. They've done like a complete not a U-turn, but they've really surprised me for this film. Like, I wouldn't expect a Minions movie to surprise me. What they've made is a little love letter to Hollywood, and it had me sort of thinking, strangely, for a Minions film, having flashbacks to Babylon, which was talking about a very similar era in cinema history when we're talking about moving away from black and white to silent movies to the talkies of the 1920s. And that is not what you expect from a Minions movie, especially when it's called Minions and Monsters. So that was really quite surprising and refreshing at the same time. That is short-lived, though, in so much as that I think it sort of soon gets convoluted again, as we've sort of critiqued of several films this week, that there's too many different threads going on at various points throughout this film, and it moves away too much from the interesting bits that they start with. Even the Universal logo at the start of the film, they flick through all the iterations of the Universal sort of branding from now until back in the 20s and the 1910s, and that really sort of sets the scene. But again, it's called Minions and Monsters, and the monsters come too late. And I was really excited for the monsters because they've basically just taken an entire sort of realm of monsters which are very dear to me, the works of H.P. Lovecraft, because they've got Cthulhu. But he's not called Cthulhu in this. He's got a different voice. He's called Goomy, to make it a bit more child-friendly. And that Goomy is voiced by South Park's Trey Parker, which was a complete surprise. I didn't find that until afterwards that was the case. So I think, it's an ambitious Minions movie. It's not a return to the sort of same flair because again it's a prequel, but it's Minions. It's still slapstick. It's still ridiculous, and it was interesting for a Minions film, if not a little convoluted.
Okay, Nick, was it funny for a Minions film? Did this film make you laugh? Is there enough for adults and for kids?
Well, I mean, would you believe it's the 7th movie in the franchise, which did surprise me. There are that many. I think Minions and Marmite. I love the Minions.
If you could have seen Nick's face, then that was a joy.
I get why people wouldn't like the Minions, but I just love them. I think setting it in the golden age of cinema, as Stuart, I agree with everything Stuart said, by the way. I think it was very well put, particularly with the monsters coming too late. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. 90 minutes, great family entertainment. The setting the Minions in the golden age of cinema, because they've always been sort of Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, even Mr. Bean-esque, but that thing I thought was brilliant setting, really clever idea. There are some hilarious moments. I absolutely love when they go from silent cinema into the talkies, the sort of jazz singer thing, and then I realise the Minions just can't, because this obviously was reflected in a lot of Hollywood stars disappeared overnight because their voices did not reflect what they look like. I just loved all of that. It's very, very meta. I enjoyed it enormously, and I think it told its stupid, idiotic story the way it wanted to, and it didn't overburden itself with subtext in the way that perhaps Toy Story 5 did. And so I'm basing it on the base of just 90 minutes of pure family entertainment joy. And I will just say, the screening I was in, loads of laughter and clapping at the end.
Great. Well, fun and mayhem for all. I'm going to come very quickly to you, Mark, because as always we're running out of time because I did not do a good time of pacing the show. Mark, what did you think?
I would say this is my second favourite of the Despicable Me franchise, behind Despicable Me 2, and I was not prepared for that at all. It does take a while to get going. However, in the end, the relentless silliness of it. For example, Trey Parker as Goomy, whose pronunciation of the word movie is odd, and every single time it's sort of movie, which I have a big thing for. There's some weird little cameos. One at the beginning I won't spoil because it's a lot of fun. And if you're not a Minions fan, this is not going to win you over. No. But moments, like them dashing past Harold Lloyd hanging off a clock, and then Buster Keaton, being referenced in the very next scene.
Exactly.
I will try and very quickly say this has had great reviews from critics. It's got Metascore of like nearly 70, 90% of Rotten Tomatoes, and it's had terrible audience scores in America. And it does beg
cinema, maybe.
It does beg the question quite who it's for. I think kids, parents who want kids to have an appreciation of cinema and will hope to use this as a gateway drug to showing them Buster Keaton films and classic silent cinema in their years to come. I hope it is that gateway drug.
Yeah, quickly, Stu.
I'm not sure it is.
Yeah, I think that's very, because Minions are inherently slapstick, and although those early silent movies were often inherently slapstick too, and I think that's a good pairing of the styles. Okay, so bravo, Pierre Coffin, we say, who is directing those and voicing them. That is Minions and Monsters, a certificate PG, and it's showing everywhere and in IMAX. We're going to round out the show very quickly with a couple of streamers. First up, voicemails for Isabel.
This random girl has been leaving voicemails on my new work cell. They're for her sister.
I love dating. Except for the part where you feel like a hideous, unlovable troll that might match with Ted Bundy.
My boss is so unhinged, my dude.
Line up!
Yes, chef!
Streaming now on Netflix, this film stars Zoe Deutsch as Jill, an aspiring chef from Austin who's trying to establish herself in San Francisco. She's struggling with work, relationships, and life in general, and she finds comfort in leaving voicemails for her late sister Isabel. Messages she doesn't expect anyone else to hear, but lo and behold, those messages begin landing on the phone of Wes, an Austin-based real estate developer paid by Nick Robinson. As he listens to Jill, he finds himself increasingly invested in the life of a complete stranger. Nick, that sounds pretty cloying on paper. Does this film balance the rom and the com?
It's very rom-com.
Very rom-com,
it's very
in a good
rom-com.
way.
In a good way. I enjoyed this movie. I had fun watching it. I think there are three complaints. Everyone feels like they're stalking each other.
Well, I mean, they kind of are.
Which they kind of are. I'm on the fence on this one, and I'd like your opinion on it. I wasn't convinced between the chemistry between the two.
Well, that was going to be my next question to Mark, but we can talk about that in a moment.
No,
but keep going, and then we'll bring it up.
I'm not sure. I'm kind of sitting on the fence. So moments I thought it worked, and moments I think it didn't. I do think Nick Robinson is a good actor. He's a fine actor. But Zoe how do you say her name? Deutsch. Zoe Deutsch. And by the way, she's got a line to a lot of films this week. But anyway, Zoe Deutsch, I think, is a great... I think she held it. I think she was the glue.
She's wonderful.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
I love her.
She's so likeable. And I was charmed by it.
I
didn't love it, but I was charmed.
Mark, I was going to say to you that they do live and die on chemistry, and there's something there. But I must admit, I had to check afterwards to see, because I feel like Zoe Deutsch has been around for such a long time. And Nick Robinson, I only really know from playing a kid in Jurassic Park. So I thought there was a big age gap between them. I was like, are we sure there are? But it turns out there are literally. She's just a year older than him. I just think that since everybody Everybody wants some. Everyone wants some. The Linklater film, that was when I first saw Zoe Deutsch, and that must have been like 15 years ago. So I think she just hasn't sort of aged. Anyway, did you feel that they were you invested in their relationship, their slightly stalky relationship?
I wouldn't say I was necessarily invested. Sorry, I wouldn't say I was necessarily invested. I think they work better as individuals than they do as a pairing, which is unfortunate for a rom-com. Yeah. I think Nick Robinson and Zoe Deutsch are both great in this. Did I buy them actually when it gets to the inevitable? This is not spoiling anything in a rom-com. When it comes to the time of them getting together towards the end, did I believe that the journey they'd been on, they would actually want to be together? No, I don't think the film really convinced me that in particular the mistakes that he makes in some senses he'd kind of redeemed himself for.
But Zoe Deutsch has also gone on her own press tour for this, obviously, and I mean, shocked she's on in the studio now, but she's also said, obviously, this isn't just a love story between Wes and Jill, it's also this love story and this dealing of grief between Jill and Isabel, Izzy, her sister, who dies of cancer very early on in the film.
It is, and it's also trying to talk about themes of female empowerment. She goes to a podcast record,
that was
guy
enjoyable.
Of this guy that she dated and rips him a new one, and then there's the wonderful Nick Offerman, another Parks and Rec veteran. It's a great week for them in the show this week.
It's a great cameo from him.
Yeah. And the film is a bit on the nose at times, because at one point Zoe Deutsch calls him a Temu Gordon Ramsay, which is accurate, but we don't need to be told that. We know that.
No, I kind of like those sort of lines. I think
there could be better epithets, and I think this is where the film struggles slightly. That everything else is just too rom-com. It's
very rom-com.
If you wanted someone to come up with an absolute middle-of-the-road rom-com with as many cliches as you can pile in, then it's successful. And some of those things where it's trying to do something a little bit different, with the sister, with the female empowerment themes, get a little bit lost in that for me.
But I'll just say one thing I did like for it, though, was I felt Nick Robinson falling in love with Zoe Deutsch.
Yeah, over the and I think, and you say you didn't believe their chemistry together, but of course they spend an awful lot of this film apart anyway. And I do think, because it's not necessarily that easy to be acting to messages you're meant to be listening to on the phone. Yeah. And I thought he did that really charmingly.
I felt when the inevitable sort of drama comes, will they, won't they bit, and it all comes crashing down around him. I felt his pain at that point, which is why I was kind of on the fence about the chemistry. Sometimes I felt there was some chemistry, and sometimes I didn't feel there was chemistry. But I got his pain at that point. Which often
he does give a big speech, which he's sat listening to, and that kind of wins her over. And I think he sells it in that moment. He does well with that.
And I think Zoe Deutsch as well. It is not Office Romance, the terribly odd rom-com that we reviewed 2 weeks ago. But
I still can't stop thinking about it for all the wrong reasons.
It's a very serviceable Netflix film, which is a lot more than we say for a lot of things. It's a Certificate 12A. It's streaming on Netflix. We're going to stick with Netflix, and we're going to see what happens when Eric Andre turns up when your life is going well.
I don't believe it, but I think that's my little brother from a charity thing in high school. Yeah, I barely remember.
Brother? Is that you?
He obviously doesn't have anywhere else to go. Maybe you can stay with us for a night or two.
What? Get in here!
Just me and you.
Is this really my life? Don't mean the same thing. I'm driving a car! He's not my actual brother. Good morning! But the timing on this could be worse. I start shooting tomorrow. We should
cut. That was the trailer for Little Brother, and props out to Matt probably for finding a trailer that we could actually play on the radio. It's currently the #1 film on Netflix, and if subtlety is your thing, you can go and leave and make a cup of tea right now. That was John Cena starring as Rudd. He's a successful property developer, and his life is heading in exactly the right direction. He's about to star on a reality show. Everything's good. But then Marcus, played by Eric Andre, turns up. He is Rudd's little brother of the title, although it's part of a buddy program that they were in. They're not actually related by blood. And what follows is just a comedy that really, it's like someone listened to the Farrelly Brothers and turned it up to 11. Nick, John Cena has become, I think, one of Hollywood's sort of most reliable comedy leads.
I was thinking about the films he's done in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and I've enjoyed them all, from Freelance through to Heads of State. I could reel off a whole number of them, all Netflix or streamers. And the one I probably liked least was Argyle, but he was hardly in that one. No, this was fun. I enjoyed it. There was some warmth and heart to it. It's quite adult in places. I felt. I mean,
yes, be warned.
Be warned. There's a scene in a car that John Cena is involved in, which was not on one of my life's bingo cards, but I won't really repeat it on the radio. But it involves a certain sexual practice. It's. Who's Eric Andre, isn't it?
Yes,
he's
from
well
Adult
known.
Swim.
Yes, and he's very well known for doing pranks and getting him, himself beaten up and hurt and stuff like that. And this felt very much a vehicle for him,
for sure.
And I thought he played it very well. And I would have liked them to have got a little bit quicker to where they were going, but there was warmth and genuine kinship between the two of them. It ended very, very nicely, I thought. I enjoyed it.
I had a really good time. I don't know if I felt slightly guilty about how much of a good... But then I did love a thoroughly gross-out comedy from the 90s. I'm a child, I'm a sort of mid-adult of the 90s, and I loved it for that. I thought Michelle Monaghan was great. I thought Chris Maloney was great as the sort of elder brother that John Cena is so obsessed with, and that's his sort of relationship issues. I just thought it did it...
Who played his wife?
It's Michelle Monaghan.
Michelle Monaghan.
Who sort of moved again from being sort of in action movies to now being the heart in these. I think she's been in that, the Mark Wahlberg family.
She does a
good job.
There was an honesty to this movie that I very much enjoyed. I would recommend this one.
I think so, and I think as well we have to remember that John Cena is such a great guy, it seems to me, off screen as well as on screen, and that warmth completely comes across whatever he's doing, and you always want him.
Have I got quickly time to say that it was directed by Matt Spicer, who was Zoe Deutsch was in Flower for that one, and Zoe Deutsch is a voice in Debbie in Minions, so it's very much a Zoe Deutsch week as far as I'm concerned.
Zoe Deutsch week, Netflix week. That is Nick and I both very much enjoyed Little Brother. We are also the John Cena fans. I would say that Eric Andre's performance is pretty chaotic, but if you can live with that and you love John Cena, Little Brother is going to be thoroughly for you. That wraps it up. It's a Certificate 15. It's showing on Netflix. That wraps it up for this week. I didn't write an outro, so I don't know what we're going to be doing in the next 2 weeks. So I'm hoping somebody might know.
The Odyssey.
The Odyssey, of course.
The Odyssey.
How can I forget? We won't dedicate a whole show to the Odyssey, but you never do. You never know, we might do. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you to everyone in the studio. See you in 2 weeks.